Rage in the Cage here. I've got Dennis from Friends of Brother Adam once again. We're talking about beekeeping for preppers. This is our third live stream, and here we go. Dennis, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Um, been busy making hives and stuff downstairs in my workshop, but yeah, definitely been doing a lot of preparing for spring, and yeah, it's been a busy time.
Yeah, I mean, so in the last two streams, we talked about how to get started and things to look out for, places to start with, different things like that. Yeah, as we get closer to spring and when the bees come alive and the plants come alive and all that, just like in the garden, in the apiary, in the beekeeping world, you must there's a lot of things to do. So
Yes, a lot of things
let's
to do and a lot of things to prepare for. So when we're looking at what's happening with bees during this period of time, we're in winter right now, and so the beekeepers who have bees that are on the way, um, as in they don't have them yet, but they've ordered them.
right,
There's a lot of things to do before you receive your bees. And for those beekeepers who have bees and are just letting them winter, there's lots of things to start doing as well. So I think we'll approach it from those two perspectives, and we'll start out first with beekeepers who don't have their bees yet.
okay.
Um, so
And that's most of us, right? That's people that are like myself that are just getting into this, and so yeah, it's that first moment of contact, right?
right.
It's that
So
first, that exhilaration, that first, damn it, I'm doing this, right? No,
yeah,
seriously, like,
that
you know,
that leap into the
yeah,
beekeeping world.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think uh, we have to talk a little bit about um, uh, what our ideas are for how we intend on interacting with the bees. So we've talked just a tiny bit about houses, but we really haven't talked about how we are going to be um, interfacing with the bees. You know, you got your beehive, and and you're going to be doing stuff, but how are you going to? Are you going to be a lazy beekeeper and put your bees in the hive, give them a little bit of food, leave them until September, and then see what's there, right? Or are
Right.
you going to be kind of like hands on a little bit and just kind of watch and observe, but not really um, do anything big. Like a lot of times, people who start beekeeping, they just want to let things go for a little bit and see how things go. Um, that's kind of like the middle edge, and then there's beekeepers who are so curious about these darn little insects that they're going to be in their hives every freaking day and checking things out and seeing how it's growing, seeing what new things the bees are doing, sitting outside their beehive, in their lawn chair, sitting back and watching bee TV as the bees come and go from their hives and observing what they're bringing back into the hive and all those kind of things. So there are those three kind of beekeepers, right? Um,
Yeah.
and our beekeepers who are what I call factory beekeeping. So essentially, they're professional beekeepers who have 200 to 1,000 hives. They really don't have time to do very much with each hive, and so they're kind of like that first category where they throw the bees in the field. In the spring, they'll um, be taking out the prophylactic treatments that they've been having in there. So bees get diseases, and they also have pests in the hives, and so they have, factory beekeepers have to make sure that they treat it whether it needs it or not, because they're not in the hive and checking out the hive enough to know whether or not each single hive is having trouble. So
Okay, so yeah, so just really quick, just on this point. So we're talking right now, the points you're making are about guys that do this for a living, and they have, a lot of they deal in numbers, because it's all about, they have to make a profit, but in order to make that profit, they have to keep things healthy. And so
right,
on an exponential scale, they will see parasites and diseases and things on a larger scale than those of us that might, as like preppers, want to work with a small hive. So
right.
I think the point, I should let you carry on, but I want everyone to come along with us, because I'm learning this along with everybody else. I mean, this is all new to me. I'm walking into this brand new.
Yeah,
So, for those of us with these tinier things, and we don't know what to look for, and these things are going to happen on a smaller scale. So
yeah.
for us to have that larger beekeeper as a consultant, as a friend, as a helper, that's a big deal, because they're going to be able to find things for us that we'll never see.
Oh, sure, and experience as well. However, I'm putting the large beekeepers in with the hardly ever touch the hive beekeepers, because they have to do their beekeeping essentially in a similar way. Um,
Okay.
if you're going to have a hands-off thing on your bees, you're going to want to make sure that they have their medicines, have their pesticides in there that kill selective insects in the hive. You're going to want to have that in the same way that the big beekeepers want to have it, right? So you in the fall time, you would be putting in your they have a kind of a fog machine that puts in something called oxalic acid, and that gets rid of mites. And mites are
Oh,
they're kind of like little ticks,
sure.
but they're
Yeah. Yeah.
red and they're really super small.
We deal with
And
it in the gardens as well as in the greenhouses. We deal with the same thing. It's a different species, but it's the same. It's yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Okay, carry on.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
dealing with that. So
yeah.
you're putting in these chemicals into the hive so that the hive has the best chance, because you're not going to be messing with it, has the best chance to survive through the next year. And so beekeepers who don't really want hands on, they go and they do that, and then in the spring it's time to remove those treatments. So they also have these little strips that you can buy, and you have to up here in Canada, you have to get a you have to register as a farm, even though you're a beekeeper. You have to register a
Yeah,
farm,
that's
and get
exactly.
your
Yeah, people need to understand that. That's you know, you're talking about Canada, and people down in the States or people in Europe. It's just like the gun laws. Your jurisdiction with agriculture, beekeeping, animal husbandry, you have to know what is going on locally and what matters to you for you to be able to go forward with this. So sorry, I just wanted to make that point, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Keep going. Yeah.
So and you're very right. We have to know our particular laws in the area that you're working in, and whether you're working within the law or whether you're working as a protest against
Preppers.
what they're
Fuck it.
doing.
We're preppers.
But it really hampers a lot of beekeeping, because we have to register with our PID number
Right.
here in Alberta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is we register as a farm so that we can get these bee medicines. So, and a lot of times the Department of Making You Sad keeps track of who's buying the bee medicines, and that will trigger an inspection on your apiary.
Oh,
So it's one of those things. If you
yeah.
want to have hands off and you want to not have to worry about different ways of treating these insects and their diseases and their pests in a organic way and in a way that doesn't require the chemicals and beekeeping treatments, that would be another another discussion. But
Yeah. Yeah.
as these hands-off beekeepers come in, they're going to be taking off these little strips that get rid of the mites as well, get rid of nosema, and nosema is bee diarrhea, and
Oh,
it gets rid of all sorts of problems in your hive. So you'll be removing them. You'll be feeding them for the first month or so, um, just to get them going because we don't have our first flowers yet.
can I ask a question really quick?
Yep.
I'm really intrigued by the reference you just made, and again, I don't know the beekeeping world, but I'm learning as we go.
Yeah.
And but I've kept chickens and rabbits and goats and cattle and horses and animal husbandry. Is it fair to say that for those of us that have done these things, um, there's more similarities than differences with beekeeping as far as the health of the animal and the problems you run into? You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? Because you just talked about diarrhea and things like that. Okay. And I mean, you yourself, you have small animals and you have large animals. So again, for our viewers and the people in the chat that do have these things, is it kind of a confidence booster that some of the things we're already familiar with will will work into the beekeeping world, or am I wrong?
No, you're right. Animal husbandry and insects do have a lot of similarities. And the theories of treatment, the theories of how we make things work, they're very similar. And like for example, chickens. With chickens, you are going to be providing things that are holistic for chickens to rid themselves of their own mites. So you would have a scratch box full of sand and dirt, so that they could get in, kind of flap their
Yeah,
wings, get
yeah,
get dust
yeah,
on them, and do their dust bath and get the fleas off
yeah,
and this stuff.
yeah, yeah.
You're doing that holistically. Now there are products that you can put on your animals that get rid of those things because it seeps into the animal and goes through their bloodstream, and when the fleas and ticks bite them, they don't like the taste and they're off and gone, right?
Right.
Or they
Yeah. Just
die.
like it's like the oil swabs that the animals walk under, and they get the treatment on their back, and it keeps the ticks and the fleas and the mites and all those things off. So
Right.
it's not the same kind of deal, but it is. The bees require the same kind of thing.
Yes. And you have to
Oh,
decide
good. Okay.
you have to decide if your theory of beekeeping. So if you're a granola type, which I kind of lean towards being a granola type, in that I like to treat my bees holistically and not necessarily with chemicals, because I'm nervous about putting chemicals in the same hive as the honey that we're going to be harvesting in a few
Yeah.
months.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry again, but I'm trying. I'm learning this as I go, but I'm trying to make points for folks that are learning this too. Bees are a very tiny, delicate being. So what a cow or a sheep or a goat gets away with, or a pig, um, a bee might not. Is that
Yes.
fair? Is that fair to
Um,
say?
yes. So any treatment that you do would have to be um, according to how many bees are in the hive, what kind of space that is in the hive, and that kind of stuff. If you're treating a hive with, I don't know, 100,000 bees, let's say, so a huge, big monster hive,
Yeah. Yeah.
you would need more medicine because a lot of the bees would not be getting that medicine if you didn't put in more medicine. And if you
Right.
have a
Okay.
smaller hive, you're not going to want to put in the huge, big, 4 or 5 mite strips, and it would just be too much, right?
Yeah, we overwhelm them and hurt them in the long run, right?
Right. And you have to treat
Okay. Yeah.
bees like a super organism. And so what we mean by that is
Ah,
you're
the
not
hive.
treating every
The hive is an
individual.
organism.
Yes. So it's a superorganism.
Yeah.
So you can't treat every single bee. It would be really nice. My honey always teases me about knitting sweaters for my bees for the winter, but we can't treat them individually like that. So we have to treat them as a superorganism. And so
Ah.
when you are giving medicine, you're giving medicine for the superorganism. And so when you're deciding how much medicine you're going to be putting in or how much treatment, organic treatment you're putting in, you have to take into account with how many a guesstimate of how many bees would be in the hive, and then be able to change the amount. So yeah, so um, when that first group of hands-off beekeepers is done feeding the bees for the spring, and your first flowers pop out, essentially they throw the top on the hive. It's in a place that the pests like raccoons and squirrels, and not squirrels, raccoons and skunks, and those kind of animals that might get in and eat the bees are out of
Foxes,
the way from
coyotes.
them. And once we get them out of the way, they put the top on and they leave it until maybe mid-spring, midsummer.
Okay.
Excuse me. It's
So,
it's terrible.
are you talking? Are you like? I guess it depends on your climate, but like for us in Zone 6, it would be uh, early June, whereas people in Zone 5 and 4 down like closer to the equator and etc. That would be more of a like even a March and April kind of thing. Like people in warmer climates with the earlier temperatures, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it really depends on temperature as to, or as zones as to how many um, months you have without flowers, how many months you have for beekeeping. Up here in Canada, we're lucky to have 3 months worth of beekeeping. Anything else is a wonderful thing, but not something that we expect, right? Um,
Okay.
so, um, and down south, like in Florida, they might have maybe a month where they are um, not beekeeping. So, they
Oh.
have a 10-month beekeeping season type thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you know what? Actually, I can relate to that because when I ran my landscape company in Victoria, I literally mowed lawns for people on Christmas Eve so that they would have a beautiful yard for their family to show up to.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
totally. And
yeah,
in
yeah.
in uh, in British Columbia, that's one of the places that we Canadian beekeepers, if we have the money and the ability, ship our bees to overwinter. Is down there in the Okanagan Valley and over there.
The Sonora Valley, yeah, that stretches all the way from Kelowna all the way down to Mexico. People don't understand that there's a valley called the Sonora Valley that is warm weather. Cactuses grow the whole bit. That's a and the thing is too, you only have to travel half an hour out of the valley, and you're back into the climate that you and I deal with, and the seasons we deal with. These are
Yeah,
all things to take into effect. People that live in Nebraska and Oklahoma, they do get winter, but their realities are different than, like you said, Florida or you in Alberta. So yeah, this is very valuable information. That's good.
yeah.
Thanks.
And like if we're able to, like if you have tons of money and you're able to ship your bees to BC or over to Ontario, where they have the other warm climate in Canada. It's very expensive, and but the thing is, your bees, it's not as harsh. You get a higher recovery rate in the spring. You don't have as much winter kill off. It's kind of nice, and that's where they do a lot of the splits and the creation of new hives, is because they have a longer bee season, and so they're able to start. Sorry.
Okay, so they're just confirming everything you said. They're making sure you're staying on point is what's happening there, right?
Yeah, they're able to they're able to make the bee hives and stuff a lot sooner in the time.
Okay.
And we have so with those hands-off beekeepers, they'll touch the beehives maybe once or twice more before the fall, and just get in there, make sure things are doing fine. And a lot of times they'll let their hives swarm out and leave, and then so there's a natural process, because it is a superorganism. In order to propagate the hive and send bees to a better place, the hives will split. So hands-off beekeepers don't care about the splits. They allow the splits to go off and become wild bees, and then they are able to keep the bees that stay behind and the new queen that is there, and the hive is renewed, and they just start off again. And then at the fall, they see how much honey they have to harvest, and harvest whatever honey they believe they can take, leaving some for the bees. And then they feed them again in the fall, so that they top up their honey reserves and put them into winter. And that's all that they do. So they're the lazy beekeepers, and they're wonderful beekeepers, because they teach us a lot about what happens with the bees.
Okay. I have a quick question. Again, this comes back to people that keep small birds and animals. So people that deal with chickens and pigs and goats, we're like, you talk about the bees, all of the bees become one. And with, you see that a tiny bit with herds, but not really. However, if you raise quails, or if you raise other small bird species in that same family, they act more like that.
Yeah.
Right? So people that they deal with grouse or quails, pigeons, things like that. Anything that moves in a flock or flies in a flock as one, that's they're going to have a better maybe understanding of the apiary than people that deal with the species that are more individual. Is that a fair assessment, or?
Yeah, you could say that. When swarms happen,
Oh,
what happens is, before the swarm happens, they send out bees to check out where they possibly could go, and to find nice homes. And so when they go out, they check it out. They see the space that they like, how, and if there's food around, type of thing. And then they come back to the hive and report. And they do their little dance and tell everybody about it. And then 3 or 4 will go to that location and come back. And then the 3 or 4, if there's a consensus there, then they'll send a few more. And when they come back that 3rd or 4th time, they're pretty sure that that's where they want to go. And so at that time, then they start deciding on the new queen. They find an egg that has been laid for 3 days, and they decide that that particular one is going to be a queen. And they start building out a cocoon for her called a queen cell. And they start feeding her as soon as she hatches. They start feeding her the royal jelly. And then
Yeah.
As she's growing, then she becomes the new potential queen. And as soon as they cap off that cocoon, that's when they put the queen bee on a diet and chase her around the hive until she's good and ready to leave.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so,
So there's a question from Voodoo Queen. He wants to know. I have a question. I plan on building along. I plan on building along and capturing local bee hives. Do I have to treat them? So I guess the answer comes into what you just said, that as these new queens, as the new hive forms a new queen in the year, if that's a healthy queen, then it's going to go ahead. But if there's issues with it, they won't choose that queen. They'll move on to a different queen. Is that
well, nature tends to do things in several with lots of surplus. So
great?
a lot of times they will make 5 or 6 queens in the same hive, and then how they handle that is most times the first young queen out will kill her sisters, and she'll be the queen of the hive.
Oh, so that
And
the strong will survive.
yes, the stronger
Ah,
ones will survive.
okay.
What this gentleman was talking about, and he's probably talking about building a long hive, LONG, I'm
Yep.
guessing.
Yes.
And a long hive is just it's like our standard box hives, except it's 3 boxes long without the internal without the internal parts of 3 boxes.
Okay.
So you have 10 frames in every box. And so if you make a long hive, you have round about 30 frames inside that box. And so it sounds, I don't know, but you would be reading it, but it sounds to
Yeah.
me like they're planning on capturing their own swarm.
Yes,
Um,
that's what he's asking. Yes.
and he's asking if they need to be treated. So you'll probably have to be, if this is your first time beekeeping, I would suggest you be the last group and start being in that beehive several times in a week and learning what's going on. And when you do that, you're able to check out whether or not they seem healthy. There are some tests that you can do to see whether or not they have mites. There is a test, or you can go inside the hive and check to see. Down south, they have hive beetles, and they're little beetles that run around inside the hive and cause all sorts of difficulties. But whether they have hive beetles that have moved in as well, whether or not you look on the outside of the hive and see whether or not they have poop stains on the outside of the hive, that would tell you that they might need treatment for nosema, the bee diarrhea.
Hmm.
You'd be able to get in and check out the hive and see whether or not you need it.
Okay.
With mites up here in Canada, we usually scoop out about 100 bees or so and just capture them. Make sure you don't have the queen in there. And then you're going to pour some alcohol in there, drown them by splashing it around, and then sit it on your counter and wait a few minutes. And what happens is if they have mites, the mites will sink to the bottom and the bees will float to the top. So then you just take a look at that, count how many red mites you have in there, and then that would be your mite count. And it would tell you whether or not you need to treat it or not. So
Oh,
that's
you don't even need a magnifying glass for that. You'll be able to see it with
no,
the naked eye.
definitely. So
Ah,
there are ways that you can tell whether or not you need to treat your bees. Um, and if you're going to treat them organically, if you're treating for mites organically, you would use rhubarb leaves, and you'd put the rhubarb leaves across the top of the hive, and the bees would go up and clean out the rhubarb leaf. And as they're chewing on it, it has a poison in the rhubarb leaves that allows them to get rid of their mites. And it's a natural way of doing things, and fairly decent. But with mites, you have to combine several treatments together if you're doing it organically in order to get rid of the mites enough that you're not going to have problems. And that's a topic for a little bit later, but you do drone cones and you take the drone cones out, and freeze the drone combs, and then put them back in and let them make more drones. The mites like to lay their babies with drones.
Yeah.
So by taking out that whole entire amount of drones, you are taking out a ton of mites. Almost
Oh,
almost a
yeah.
fourth of the mites go with them.
Okay. So
So
again, I mean, again, for me learning, but also for the people that are watching this for the first time, they want to get into beekeeping, preppers that know this is important. And as a confidence builder, what I'm hearing is for those of us who have been fortunate enough to deal with small animals, rabbits, chickens, quail, there's more similarities than differences. And
yes,
a lot of what we may have already learned is 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 uh, is going to be applied with the beekeeping. Like,
yeah,
right?
yes, definitely, and that's the animal husbandry that you're talking about.
Okay, that's
So
a great thing because again, I mean, I've been scared of this for years. I honestly have. It's something that I've been fortunate enough that I've always had beekeepers around me in the surrounding areas, so I haven't had to do it. But it's something that I knew was important and I've always wanted to do. Yet I've taken on chickens, quails, pigs, goats, cattle, and at the same time, there is certain things to learn. There is ways to do it. There is things you need to know, but you can learn them.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
and it's a
that's thank
matter
you.
of jumping in with both feet. Literally,
Yeah,
it's a matter of just deciding to do it, going out, getting your hive, or capturing a hive, and just starting. And
and just like the exotic plants, I mean, okay, so if I do this and I lose my first hive, that might not be my fault, and maybe I just have to say, well, okay, and start again, right?
yeah, I have lost hives every single season that I've bee kept. However, what I've been able to do is over the period of time that I've been learning, I make more hives during the spring and summer. And then if I lose one or two hives, I've got four hives left. And then the next year, if I lose two or three hives, then I've got six or seven hives left.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a numbers game. And if you do end up losing your hive, don't despair. you know, it starts out when you very first start out. It's a little bit of money if you go the commercial way and go purchase all your hives and do all of that stuff. It's quite a bit of
yeah.
money, and if you go purchase your swarm pack, which is 2 pounds of bees and a queen in a little net cage. If you purchase a swarm pack, that's $250 in per box that you're getting. If you buy them in something called a nuke, which is a baby hive, which has a queen that's producing eggs, larvae, and cocoons, everything in there, um, they um, they cost round about $350 right now up here in Canada.
Mm,
So when you lose that much money, you go ouch.
yeah.
But
Well,
it's really no different than like if you were doing cows,
okay.
and your
Can,
cow gets bloat and dies on you,
yep,
and you didn't know how to treat it.
yep.
That's a lot of money for a freaking cow, right?
It is. I because of your unique experience. So everybody in the chat needs to know that Dennis has lived in Canada, but he's also lived in the United States. Dennis has served in the Marine Corps, and Dennis has served in the PPCLI.
No, in the army.
Oh, you were in the Army. I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry. I knew that you were
Sorry, in the
okay. But
army.
my point with this conversation and this topic, and this is a beautiful thing about having you here, is that you have physically lived in the United States and you have physically lived in Canada. And you understand the differences in our economy and price differences. And so, what you just quoted up here in Canada, I guess, you can kind of relate to our viewers from the United States because 90% of the people who watch this are from the States. So, um, what I'm asking is, for their benefit, if you can relate some of the price differences for what
It's a
they'll be
heck of a
dealing
lot
with.
cheaper down in the States. It is so
Yeah.
much cheaper down in the States. And it's one of the reasons why I am literally fighting the Alberta Beekeepers Commission, or whatever they are, the Department of Making You Sad. I want them to open up the U.S. border.
I'm
Uh,
sorry, but I'm going to make a meme tonight.
yes, the Department of Making You Sad
No, they're cutting us off. Yeah.
has deemed that Americans and there we go. We're back on. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's the Department of Making is has decided that the American bees have too many diseases that we don't want up here, and it's absolutely silly. The hive beetles that they're worried about coming up here,
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to last up here. Their life cycle would end that season, because they need to put eggs into the ground. That's where they put their eggs in. And with a lot of the other diseases, they wouldn't come up. They're scared about Mad Bee. They they have what is it? Africanized bees that got released in South America and made their way up through the United States.
Oh yeah, yeah. We actually had, yeah, sorry, but we actually had to deal with those in Victoria a few years ago when I ran my landscape company, because they made it up on trucks and trains, and they got out, and the climate allowed them, and we ended up dealing with them just like they did in California. So yeah, yeah. So
and
okay,
they wouldn't have gotten more than in BC,
so
because
that's a
the
really
rest
good
of the
point. And
climate
again,
up here.
that's the beautiful thing about having you doing these presentations is that you can speak about the differences between not just the border of Canada and the United States, but the climates of our provinces are so stretched out. I mean, what you deal with where you are down close to the border of the United States in southern Alberta, and what we deal with in the northern prairies and up into the boreal forest, you can relate to that in the same way that somebody would the difference between North Dakota and say Kansas or Texas. But because of your experience and the fact that you've lived in these areas, you can speak to those, right? Oh, I think we froze up. We lost him.
Well, a lot of my
YouTube's trying to kill
mentors,
us.
yeah, a lot of my mentors have been from the States. So people that I'm learning from have been from the States. And
Okay.
yeah, I when I was learning, I tried to directly utilize the information from them up here in Canada, and it just wasn't working. And I had to figure out why. Well, why was because where we live, in the zone that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that I can speak to, but there are fine points that we'd love another beekeeper to be able to tell us how they're doing it, because the finer points are different as well.
Okay.
But one of the things
Yeah,
that
that's
makes
great.
a good person better at being able to teach beekeeping is several different ways of beekeeping, and you're able to mold yourself towards the theory and ideas that the person that you're teaching has. So and let's jump on to so we've got the hands-off beekeepers done. Let's jump on to that middle group where they're in and out of the hive. Um, a little bit, maybe 20, 30 times throughout the year. And they're just, making sure things are good, but then they're a little bit more hands off than our last group. And
Okay.
So with them, they're going to be getting into their hives. They're going to be learning a little bit about why the bees do certain things, like why they need certain spaces between the frames, why they need to have go in and shave off some of the ladders that they make between, called burr comb. Why they need to make sure that the spacing on your frames are the right spacing. They need to also learn what happens when you have in the spring, when you're helping the bees clean out their hive a little bit. There's a whole bunch of dead bees on the bottom of the hive that aged out and just died. So you're able to clean up the hive and make it good for them and give them the best opportunities. And the other thing is that people that are in the hive a whole bunch more need to know where their queen is, and need to be careful not to squish their queen when they're going through their inspection process. And so that's a steep learning curve as well. Finding the queen is difficult for a lot of people. And it's a trial and error. And being able to tell what's happening with the beehive. Sometimes the beehive loses its queen, and one of the non-fertilized females in the hive will take up the egg laying, and because they haven't been fertilized, they lay male eggs. And so you'll end up with drones inside the hive, and a whole bunch of drones, and no regular worker bees. And then you can clue in that, they need a new queen, and you need to do some fixing and some doing in there. And you'll be able to also tell if the queen is starting to putter out, if the eggs in her are starting to not be as plentiful. They have a certain pattern on the egg, on the larva and brood. You look on the pattern and you say, oh yeah, it's spotty and it's all over the place. It's not a beautiful complete frame of bees. It's kind of spotty. And you're like, oh, okay, something's going on here, and maybe I need to replace the queen. And you're starting to get into more of the technical part of beekeeping, right?
Okay.
And
yeah.
Those people, they will learn. It may take them about 2-3 seasons before they're getting good enough that they can do their learning and stuff, right? However, they're going to have a little more losses when it comes to hives, because sometimes they won't catch things in time. And these beekeepers as well probably won't catch the swarm leaving the hive. And that is, you have to be in your hive every 14 days in order to make sure that you catch a new queen being made.
Wow.
Looking for the queen cell. And so these beekeepers that are there, just a few times per year, and just checking things out and learning slowly, they're not going to be in there every 14 days. And so they're not going to catch and be able to do something called a mechanical swarm, which is you making the swarm, and putting it where you want it.
Okay. So you and I have kind of had this conversation on a different subject, but I'm going to bring it in for the people in the chat, for those of us that are preppers. So this just popped into my head, and you'll see where I'm going with this. But so people that have a prepper group or a mutual assistance group, and they have 2 or 3 locations where people live, and they have gardens, etc., and other members in the group come contribute. So what you're talking about here, and the fact of getting into new hives, etc., it would probably be beneficial for those that do have the advantage of that mutual assistance group or that prepper group, that they do hives in those 3 locations, and those people that are kind of overseeing that are working together, and they're talking with the consultant as the local beekeeper like yourself that knows these things. Because you're right, you might lose one of them might lose their hive that year, but the other 2 might not, or even if 2 of them do and 1 doesn't.
Yeah.
it's again, one is none, two is one, three is at least a fighting chance. So I see right now that like I said, those people that are doing this with that design, and again, most mags and most prepper groups coming to that kind of category, and that would be a really good thing to do, and economically, it would make sense too, right?
Yeah, it would. You're able to share back and forth hive materials. You're able to share back and forth any extra boxes you have or whatever. And if you end up losing a queen, you can pull a frame of good brood and eggs, which you need to make a new queen, and you can pull it from their hive and put it in your hive, and within 2 months you'll have a bee ready to go and making her own babies. So
Oh,
actually within
okay,
a
cool.
month, but then it takes a while for her to build up enough
Okay,
stuff.
okay. We're
Perfect.
getting close to the end of the hour. I know we started a little bit late, but not too much. I do want to bring Obomp Spike in. He's another prepper and a beekeeper from down in the States. And I wanted the two of you to be able to, have that chat as professionals, as people that have experience in this. Um, and I again, it can only help, you know,
We're doing
broaden
here.
knowledge, etc.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay, I'll step out for a moment and then you bring him in, introduce him, and then I'll be back on in a few minutes. Okay. Does that
Sure.
sound good?
Okay, so that's what I'll do. So hang on, just I want you to, if you could, uh, I just want you to finish up the last 10 minutes of your presentation. Um,
Okay.
okay, so folks in the chat now, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and Obamf will join us, and then I'm going to take the link out because again, this comes down to a learning experience, learning from people with the experience, and again, I like to keep my live streams short because again, there are many people that have to pay for their internet, and I don't like long streams because I want people to feel obligated, not obligated, but I want them to feel that it's okay to watch a certain stream because it's not 9 hours long. So
Yeah, totally.
Dennis, you carry on, and I will do this.
Okay, sounds good. So the last group is of beekeepers is a group of beekeepers that is in their hive a whole bunch. Um, this group tends to be more experimental. They want to get in there. They want to learn how to split hives. They want to make sure that they're not losing a hive to the wild and have them swarm out and leave a baby hive behind. So they are in there at least every 14 days, if not, twice, 3 times a week. And you learn a whole lot when you start spending time with the bees. A lot of people who are beekeepers used to go and just sit out by the beehive and watch bee TV and see what's going on. And when they saw something that was, oh, where are they taking that? Then they'd walk over with their bee suit and they'd crack open the hive and take a look in and start picking up frames. And oh, that's what they're doing. Okay, interesting. And so you learn a little bit more about that. And when you're getting the pulse of the hive and you're in there, 2, 3 times a week, you start seeing some of the bigger picture. And that goes with the animal husbandry. If you start seeing the bigger picture for quail and you start realizing that they have certain need or something's just not right or whatever, you're able to experiment and find something that does work for you. And what they say in beekeeping, it's the old adage of beekeeping is local. So every beekeeper has their own way of doing things. Beekeepers tend to be experimental. They tend to want to make their own hives. They tend to want to make their own inventions of what's going to make the best hive. And, we've had some really good things come out of it and then some really crappy things come out of it. But with the crappy things, you learn what you did wrong. You can change things, and it's a great way to learn about inventing things and innovative designs and that kind of stuff. We have a wonderful technology coming out, the 3D printing. It is something that is just incredible for beekeeping, because we haven't been able to make stuff with the tolerances that we need and make it again and again and again. The repeatability is one of the things that we need in beekeeping. So with 3D printing, all of a sudden we've got a brand new tool and a way to make everything we need, more or less, because we don't need something as big as a M16 to be able to do what we're doing. We need these little teeny parts that limit what can go in the hive and what comes out of the hive. We need stuff the size of the boxes so that we can put the boxes on and keep them level. We need a lot of different things that we're now able to do with 3D printing, and it's wonderful. So
wow. Yeah. Wow. Like all these years playing with different size drill bits, and now you can just.
Yeah. And the transmission of information from beekeeper to beekeeper, I've got a 3D printer. This part here really makes the difference. Here, let me send it to you. And then they can make it, and then they can go and experiment with it. And hey, what a great way to trade information, and royalty free. And, it's, you're not dealing with the Department of making you sad.
I am so making that meme tonight. So OBAMF Spike, are you still in the chat? Are you still watching? I put the link in there for you. There's been a couple other folks. I think maybe Brian Peterson and Healthy Homestead have said that they've done a little beekeeping too. But to be fair, OBAMF has he's been a mod for a while, and he's been in a lot of chats, and we've kind of talked about this, and so I want to give him the fair chance. And again, like I said, I mean, Dennis, luckily enough, Dennis here has lived in several locations in different climates, and he's got that life experience. But he is beekeeping in Alberta, and
it's as cold as sin.
Okay, so pseudoscientist just told us in the chat that OBAMF said he couldn't hang kids and life, and hey, that happens. And I tell you what, OBAMF, if you're watching this afterwards, watching the stream, then no problem. We'll get you in another time. And you know what? Yeah, and that's the thing. Life does happen. You have kids. I mean, Dennis has kids. We all have lives. Okay, so I want to be fair, and so the link is there, and I want honest answers, because again, this is a teaching video. Dennis is here to help people to learn to be able to get into this. So Brian Peterson and Healthy Homestead, if you could just answer with a yes and no. Are you beekeepers? Are you you have apiary experience, and can you come in and join Dennis and collaborate? Or even if you've done it for a year or two, at least you've got some experience doing it, and you can share your experience. Because again, the whole idea that Dennis asked me to be able to do this, and we came upon this podcast, was that I want to learn this, and he wants to teach me, but I have an audience, and you folks, there's so many of us in the world that have we've talked about this, and we're scared of it. I mean, it's another one of those things. It's just like medical. I mean, there's a lot of people that the first thing they think of is blood and gore, so they're scared to get into medical experience. Funny thing, both Dennis and I are military medics, and we can both tell you that you're dealing with sneezes and pink eye way more than you are bleeding.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's one of those things. I wanted to scroll through a few of the books really quickly that I've
Sure.
been reading and looking at, and I'll just read off what they are. Okay,
Okay.
this one here, Beekeeping in Western Canada. And so every area has a local beekeeping type book that gives
Yeah.
you an idea about what's going on. This one is made through Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. So it's the prairie provinces plus BC.
Right.
So that is a really good one. And what's really funny is um, when I was dealing and trying to learn things, I kept getting references from the Beekeeping for Dummies and pulling it up and everything. So I just
Okay.
went out and got one.
Okay. What's your
So
opinion of it?
it's kind of bubblegum, and it is definitely generic way of doing things, and they take more of the non granola type ideas and put it forward. So, but it's a really good reference, and it gives you a very basic idea of what you're going to be doing. So
Okay.
that's a really
Okay.
good one.
Okay.
Um,
So I guess I mean that one would kind of simplify the information, and from there, then you could move into a book like the first one you showed and get right into your area and learn those things that are more specific to climate and plant life and those different things, eh?
Definitely. And
Okay.
then as you're getting a little farther and farther into doing things, this one here, splitting hives and rearing queens.
Ah,
So that's kind of like the second level of doing things. It's Growing and Managing Your Small Apiary by Joseph E. Herbert, and I've done some presentations on my podcast concerning that particular book and read right out of it, and
yeah,
it's really good thing. We also have Increase Essentials. So you remember I was talking about how we had to make a lot of bees so that if we lost some, it wasn't as big of a thing. This
right.
one is done by Lawrence John Connor, and it is really good as far as giving you the theory of how we make bigger numbers, and it's a numbers game. It
Yep.
really is.
Okay.
So that's a good
And
one.
and again, that kind of falls into the point I made a few minutes ago about if a mutual assistance groups has, a couple of different locations for gardens, etc. You know,
It's
one is
perfect.
none, two is one, three is a
Yeah.
fighting chance, right?
And
So,
and as beekeepers, we don't want to put all of our hives in one area because it is a microclimate, and in that microclimate, you are looking at bees just doing one uh, area of living, right? And if you have several areas that you can put bees, there are different microclimates, and one season they might succeed over 2 kilometers away, and the next season and then the next season might be back the other way, and different altitudes, different pest loads, different things like that will definitely make it so that you have a better chance at surviving. The one season that I had, oh, it was so horrible. I floated 16 hives down a river. um,
really,
I put my bees into a very nice valley, and I had 16 of my 18 hives come through in that area. So I just lost 2 hives, and I was just absolutely beside myself with happiness because I was going to have, a big jump on the next year of beekeeping. And then we had a 1 in 50 year flood in that area. And 16 of my hives just up and floated away.
oh man. So
So
you were able
it's
to able to take advantage of what nature offered you and what God brought to you, and then it was like, well, I've got somewhere else to put these.
yeah, but I had bees in several areas, so I was able to recover and move on. And it was a big learning curve, and it hurt because every single one of those hives was round about $400 or $500, with the woodenware $600-700. So I mean, it was, oh, It was a
Yeah.
big punch in the gut, but I
Yeah.
learned, and I won't be putting them there again. And the other thing I learned is that it's very cyclical in nature, and you're able to recover. You're able
Yeah.
to say, okay, we'll put out some money next year. We'll get some newbies. We'll keep going. And so some years you have huge, big bonus type crops, and then the next year, a
Yeah.
little less.
You
So
know,
in your business that you're going to be, you treat this as a business. In
yeah.
your business plan, you have to have a lot of latitude, a lot of ability to go up and down in success, and still maintain enough savings and enough capital in the company to be able to overcome these things, right?
Yeah.
And
That
it's just prepping.
Yeah, yeah, well, exactly. Again, that it just rolled into my mind because again, life experience, and it comes back to the point we made about having separate locations for the mag and other locations for gardens and storage and these things. But it's funny because I remember now, again, going back to my stealth garden and where I was going to put it and high up and everything else. And I don't honestly think I'm willing to admit that I thought of it at the time. The location I found was right on, and but it was the next summer. A friend of mine was in a river valley and bought a new house and put in a garden. Was very happy. It was doing great, and it got flooded, and he lost everything.
Yeah.
And so again, that just comes down to again prepping. You have to work with what you have. If you are lucky enough to have these multiple locations with a mag or a prepper group, but if you don't, um, these are the chances you just have to take. I mean, it just has to be one of those things you just have to say, okay, it's a decision I've made or we've made, and we're going to do it. And the one thing I want to say, or I guess I want to ask you, because I think I'm on the right track, but uh, with the bees and with the fact of you're doing a small thing, is this the kind of thing that if you had a flood or a fire or something that you had to get out, this is the kind of thing you could set up with the boxes and these things to be able to move too, right? Those are
Yeah.
considerations that could be taken.
So 2 seasons ago, I had my bees out behind a hedgerow, like a wind block of trees,
Hmm.
and CP Rail decided to have a nice little crash outside of, well, about 2 kilometers away, 1 kilometer away.
Oh,
And
I remember that. I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
yeah, it dumped a bunch of cars on the ground and started fires everywhere. And we had fires come within 5 feet of my hives. So I was out there fighting fires, trying to save my hives. And yeah, it was touch and go. And I did move some of my hives back from the area that I expected the fire to blow through. So yeah, it's something you can do. Um, it kills your back though,
Oh man.
because
Yeah.
some of these boxes can weigh up to 100 pounds. Um, some of the deep boxes that have honey in them and everything, they can weigh up to 100 pounds. So
Wow.
it's a dealio to move them. And some people, they figure out ways to do it where they have forklifts that do it. They have forklifts on cables, so the front forks on a cable, and they come over
Yeah.
and lift up the pallet and put it onto a truck. There are lots of ways of doing that. You can even put wheels on your hive if you really want to, and
Great.
be able to lean it back onto something and move it on out. As long as it's ratchet strapped together, and it'll move as a unit. My
Okay.
16 hives that were ratchet strapped to a pallet were definitely a unit.
Oh man.
So yeah.
Again, I remember you telling me this story. So, okay, so we're on the hour mark, and our guest is not able to make it. The other folks have said that they're happy to just keep learning.
Okay.
Um, so I think that we'll call that the hour, and we'll call that this presentation for the week on beekeeping for preppers. I want to thank you again for showing up and helping us with all this. I want to thank everybody in the chat. Those people that are watching it afterwards, please again leave your comments and your questions. And God willing, we'll be back here next Thursday for part 4.
Yeah. And I'd really like to encourage people to come visit me on podcasts everywhere, Friends of Brother Adam, and also on Odyssey at Friends of Brother Adam, no capital letters, all smooshed together. So really love to see you guys there.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Once again, thank you so much, Dennis, brother, and thank you everybody here. And that's it for this week. Beekeeping for Preppers with Rage in the Cage and Dennis. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Hoorah. See ya.